When I got off the highway and I drove here, I think it was about 5 miles, and I must have saw 100 lawnmowers going. I must have saw maybe 200 to 300 different guys working on landscape and making sure everything here looks beautiful, and I didn't see one thing edible. Yeah. So when people say there's not abundance here, there's not. I'm looking, I go, all that could be feeding people. When I walk through a town and it's just random landscape, and I'm like, you have homeless that don't have food, or we scream there's supply chains, there's all these things. You can grow it right here. Bring those communities back, man. Get local.
Our potential, it's exponential.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to another podcast. Today, I'm very blessed to have my new friend, Matthew. Matthew, thank you for coming.
Hey, man, stoked to be here. We got Farmer Jack. I was just telling Jack he looks so different than the farmers that I'm used to.
Yeah, so you said you grew up in Lancaster, PA.
Lancaster, PA.
Amish.
Yep. Well, it's interesting. When I lived in New York and I lived in Los Angeles, when people ask where you're from, I'd always say, "Oh, Philly." And I think the older I get, the more I embrace where I'm from. I'm like, "No, man, I'm Lancaster, man. I'm Lanco. Yeah. This is where I'm from." But
yeah, dude.
Amish, man.
You got the beard still.
Yeah, we do. If we just trim this off here, we'd
have
the Amish look. Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah. I don't understand it. Maybe it's keep a clean ship up top while they're eating food or drinking raw milk. Maybe.
Got you. Do they have good milk?
They have awesome milk.
Yeah, that sounds great.
When I was a kid, there was a huge Amish farm up the road from us. And it was interesting because the guy had alopecia. So he was like the reject, I guess, of the Amish community because he didn't have a beard or hair. And that was a sign of you're married, you grow your beard and everything.
Gotcha.
This guy was a wild card. He also got nailed for growing marijuana in that bust like in the 2000s and the 90s. He also got nailed for like selling pit bulls for dog fighting and stuff. So I had
Amish?
Yeah, he was a wild card. This guy was a firecracker. But what was really cool and what I learned from him when I was a kid is, one, they don't care what anybody thinks about them. Like people who go by and say stuff or throw stuff at or whatever, whatever kids do, particularly like me growing up. My high school was right near like an Amish, little school, and they only go to like 5th grade. And I remember looking down on them when I was a kid, not looking down, but being like, man, they're missing out on so much. Like I got my cool pickup truck. They're on like a little scooter. How are they not thinking they're missing out?
Us and them.
Yeah. And now I realize like they were the most connected. But one of the great things that they would do, they would always bring us loaves of bread. So they'd have their kids with like a little radio flyer wagon. They'd come down the street. My dad always had an amazing garden, but they would bring whatever was in season. They would make their own homemade bread, some pies, and they'd always have like raw milk. And I remember thinking like, oh man, I ain't drinking that. Mm-hmm. Now, like, I can't get enough of raw milk. I'm like, give it to me.
Where's the raw milk? Yeah, dude, I agree. Amazing. So they would come with wagons, like the kids, and sling them in town.
If we're just going to jump right into like the whole idea of like permaculture.
Talk about it.
And that generosity and creating community. And, it's like family, faith, and farming. And that was like the Amish. And not that it is the Amish. And I think that that's what makes them such a great foundation as like a community because they're unwavering in their values, particularly even to outsiders. Like they would generously give whatever it is that they had. They were amazing.
Wow. And they work like harder than anybody else.
Oh, man, sun up to sun down.
Yeah.
Now,
farming, man.
They did like to ask for a ride every now and then. And if you ever give somebody who's Amish a ride, make sure they clean their shoes off because they would literally come in from like the cows right into the car.
They like knock
their boots off the car a little. I'm like, thanks.
Wow.
But amazing people.
Yeah, man. That's cool. Why do you think we lost that in our society? Like, why aren't we integrated like that?
I think that we were duped into I think we were duped in kind of like man's matrix. I think with the Amish, a lot of how they live is dependent on the natural systems, dependent on God. It's dependent on the seasons. Like they can't really control it, but they have faith and knowledge that it's coming.
Wow.
Where I think with like cities and how man does it, it's like we don't need the creator, we create. and we can make sure that you're in your
Right.
boxes of whatever.
These builders and developers, they're like gods.
Yeah, I think that that's the
Interesting.
thing. And then we get removed from the land, we get removed from nature, we get removed from communities. Like, look how many, like I was living in Los Angeles for years, and no one knew their neighbor. No one really hung out, or everybody was trying to get something from somebody.
They almost don't
In a
like.
selfish
They don't
way.
like their neighbors. It's like a different vibe. Like
Yeah, everybody was in
they're right
competition,
there.
especially in Los Angeles.
competition.
Yeah. I mean, there's some places that were awesome that people would collaborate, but majority was like a competition, especially when
Yeah.
people are younger, like younger men, when you're really supposed to be developing your skills as a man and what those principles are of being a good man. A lot of it was just vanity and me versus you.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's such a stupid fight. That's such like a small.
It's,
You know what I mean? It's a zero.
it
sum.
got nobody anywhere.
It's a zero sum game. A positive sum game is lifting people up, but you learn that later in your life.
Sure. I mean,
Yeah.
I definitely, I'm definitely guilty of being selfish and being in a
Yes.
stage of me. And I think part of that growing up in Lancaster was I have to get out of here. I have to live in Philly. I have to live in New York. I have to live in Los Angeles. Like, the cities are where everything is. This is where the magic happens. And I was
It's
so
like the hero's
unfulfilled.
journey. You're unfulfilled.
Yeah, man.
Talk about that, man, because that's interesting. I can relate to that.
You know, I think my dad always had, or it still does, always had a great garden, always had fruit trees going. And he learned that from his grandfather, who came here from Slovenia in like the teens or early 1900s.
Wow.
And-
Slovenia.
Yeah, they came to America, and they were, my grandfather on my dad's side, my great-grandfather was a coal miner in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. So, I mean, he just worked the mines, and when he came home, everything was about his fruit trees. Like, my grandpa told my dad that he would have to make up excuses like why he was going outside, or, I heard somebody out there, I'm going to check everybody stay inside. And really, he'd go out and check on the wine he was making, or, the moon,
Wow.
whatever he was doing, because he was
The
harvesting
plants.
them from his apples, and he was just a man of the land.
Wow.
And my father was the same, and I never worked with my hands, really. Like, I played sports, so my dad would be showing me how to change a tire or something, and my one brother would be watching, and my other brother and I would be throwing the football around and almost hitting the jack over because we missed, and I never paid attention. And now I'm like,
Yeah.
Dad, give me your wisdom. Now I'm a husband. I have 2 stepsons, so
Oh, amazing.
now I'm
man.
like begging for the wisdom from my dad and to get back to the land, and that's where I feel a lot of fulfillment that the city, at least in my circumstances, couldn't offer me.
Amazing, dude. Yeah.
Or I couldn't
We're
offer it, really.
But it's
anything either.
yeah. That's it. We contribute. Contribution is a need we have.
Sure.
We want to give back. Yeah,
Absolutely.
man. But it's a journey,
Yeah.
But so tell us. So you're married.
I am married.
Congrats, man. How long you been married?
Thanks. We actually met in middle of 2020. So LA is like absolutely locked down. And
Yeah.
I
It was crazy there. I
yeah, it
heard.
was crazy. It was crazy. It was like
What? What was that like?
what kind of podcast is it?
Whatever you
No,
want. I mean, yeah.
It was ridiculous. It was
Yeah.
the thing is, I started dating, like when it first happened, I got out. I was down in like south, and like Orange County was pretty open. Then I was out in Sedona. And when I came back, I was doing a lot of sailing, and my wife was kind of like, everybody was against their neighbor, and my wife was still adventuring. She had this adventure crew. So they would go out and do all this epic stuff.
During the lockdown.
During the lockdown, yeah.
Got
yeah.
you.
And I lived on a sailboat in Los Angeles, so we kind of had a mutual friend, and we were connecting over Instagram.
sailboat.
Yeah, Instagram, as kids do. And my wife's like, "Hey, you got a boat?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Well, I scuba dive." And I'm like, "Well, I don't do that." And she's like, "Well, I'll teach you if you take me out on the boat." So that's kind of how we
lit.
started. And then I was like, "Hey, let's hang out." And nobody in LA was doing anything, and
Uh-huh.
we started.
So now you know how to scuba dive?
I do. Actually, this
Wow.
headband is all dirty and probably stinks and salty because we were in the Bahamas over the weekend. We just did a dive with a bunch of reef sharks. So,
Cool, man. How was that?
oh man, it's serene. you drop down into the water. It's about 40, 50 feet. And there was, 50 feet. There's like this blue hole that drops down 6,500 feet. They call it the tongue. It goes in between the Bahamas, like this carve out into the
It gets
the bottom
really
of the ocean.
deep there, I've heard.
Super deep. And there's this shipwreck. And, you're there and it's all clear. It's beautiful. And you're in this wreck. And all of a sudden you're like, everything's like firing off. Like, what happened? How'd this get here? Like, whatever,
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, boom, this like reef shark just goes by. And I just see my wife and she's next to me and she just turns and looks and just, this is the okay, like, I'm good. And she's just like, shark 2, all right. And I'm like, all right, this is my woman. so you're just floating in like this abyss. And I think it's almost like how the world is. That when you drop down into the water, you're not in control, right? There's a million elements that I can't control anything.
Facts.
And I got to slow down and I got to breathe. Mm-hmm. And the whole time you're controlling your breath because, you don't want your oxygen to go out. Also, when you breathe in, you start to rise. And when you breathe out, you start to sink. So you have to find that equilibrium.
Interesting. Right.
And when you're just cruising at like the shark's pace and you realize like, man, they're just calm and cool.
Yeah.
They're just
this
cruising.
Is their home. Yeah.
And there's fish going around. They're not attacking anything. They're just kind of curious. And you have so much more respect for life. And I think for just like the stillness of creation, to just be in it and observe, which is a permaculture principle, to just observe.
Facts.
And then I was thinking.
Just be.
Yeah. And then I was thinking, man, if we put some papaya over here and if I put some banana underwater over here, then we can make world's first underwater food forest.
Dude, amazing. So perfect transition. By the way, thanks for sharing that. Shipwreck in the Bahamas. That sounds really cool.
That was a lot of stuff. But our anniversary is this weekend, 2 years for my wife and I.
Congrats, man.
And that's when I took my PDC in right after I met my wife.
Okay.
And
so you've been doing permaculture like kind of 2 years, 3 years?
Yeah, 2-3 years-ish.
So then, talk about it, bro. You do installs too, right? You were saying?
I just started, I started doing some stuff. So we got just under an acre. We live in Los Angeles. We got married in October in Lancaster. Beautiful old farmhouse. And my wife is from the Philippines. She's from this little island called Iloilo. And on one side of the island, her family, both sides of her family had farms. And her dad's side of the family, they had this farm that was like this organic, sustainable coffee farm. That they didn't do anything special. They were just doing what they always do.
Yeah.
But the university is like, what are you doing? Like, you're not using pesticides or whatever. They're like, I don't know. We're just working. The land's allowing us to be here, and we're just cultivating it the best that we can.
Like they're already living permaculture, and we're trying to dissect it like it's just what they've been doing there for generations.
100%. So
coffee.
My wife, So my wife had that background, and then she was in LA for 20 years, and we got married, and we just started. Well, one, we wanted freedom from LA, and you could take that however you want to, but we needed to get out, especially with 2 young boys. And then we wanted.
I'm curious why though. You don't have to share if you don't want. Like,
well, okay, like for starters,
because I've been to LA, I like it, but I know maybe what you're talking about, but I don't know if I don't ask.
Well, LA's don't get me wrong, California is incredible.
Yeah,
I'll never, and it afforded me so many amazing opportunities. I just think I saw the dark underbelly of people that I know that had morals and values, and how fast they switched them.
Interesting.
When the pandemic happened. And how fast people just gave in without thinking and without actually, quote unquote, doing the research, and really having.
And the
strong
media
communities.
didn't help either. Dude. Yeah, man. Because that's interesting. Yeah.
Like I didn't want to get forced vaccinated. We didn't want our kids to get forced vaccinated to be able to go to schools. You couldn't have jobs. Like I was in Screen Actors Guild, and they were like, nope. And
it's going on YouTube, man. I hope we're all good. But but I feel that, man. In Cali, they were pushing that. But even I went out there recently. They were like, "Do you have your vax card?" I'm like, "That's never been a thing in Florida." Dude.
I just walk right through.
Yeah. I was like,
I don't discriminate, and I just continue going.
Cool,
well, people used to. I actually rock this because people would lose their mind because even when we were outside, like. Walking around outside, being in the beach or wherever, people are like, "Oh, do you have your mask?" I'm like, "Nah, I don't have it." And they're like, "But you have a headband. You could just put it over your face." And I'm like, "Nah, it feels good up here. I'd rather be up here." And people just like lose their mind, and not to like cause strife, but
it
at
is
the same time,
it is like idiocracy. It's almost too much. Like you don't have your mask, but you don't have. It's like really conditioning.
And I think here's the thing, and this is how it kind of all ties in with food and how our food systems are. Because I'm watching the same guy,
talk about it.
Same guy yell at me that you're gonna hurt everybody. You got to do your part. And this happened to me at a Ralph's in L.A. He's got 2 big Diet Pepsis, 2 big bags of Doritos, and he's trying to tell me, what quote unquote health is. And I'm looking around and I'm seeing this all over the place, and I'm like, do people actually, how disconnected are we from our health and from our body? And obviously food is thy medicine. So for me, a lot of it was like, man, if you just changed the way that you ate, or if you lived a life that was actually connected, you wouldn't have to worry about any of these things.
Yeah, it is true.
Because we had a huge community of people who were onto the land, who were very conscious about being holistic in their life and community. Everybody was fine.
Yeah, man.
And there was no fear.
Yeah, that's right. Fear was the real enemy. Tony Robbins talked about that in like his first videos. When COVID hit, he was like, yo, fear is the enemy right now. Yeah. Not anything else, the media.
Sure.
Fear, bro.
And not to get into this, because my wife's always like, oh, you're always talking. I'm like, but it was a very
We're already
important
here.
thing.
Yeah, we didn't even plan this, by the way, but I'm glad it came out.
But I think it was a very important thing, and I think a lot of people woke up in the sense of, hey, maybe I do need some sovereignty. Maybe I do need strong communities. Maybe I do need to get back to the land, particularly as men. Because nothing's guaranteed.
It was a wake-up call for a lot of people.
It was for me, for sure.
Interesting, yeah. Dude, yeah, it is. It was a turning point for sure. And I think, by the way, fear is it's like the best way governments use.
Yeah.
It's the best tactic they use for control, because you're easily manipulated when you're scared. So it is kind of, it was interesting the whole way through. But yeah, man, but
we're in Florida.
Dude, yeah. Literally, I worked right through. People were calling me, to your point. A lot of people were starting to be like, wait, I can't go to Publix. Like, they were calling me to do gardens, like quadruple the calls.
Yeah.
And I was just working through it. And we needed like a little thing that was like, hey, we're necessary service, because everyone's lawns were getting big. And I think they're just literally like, send it, let people work. And I worked all the way through.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, and it's like,
people in LA would call you a hero for stepping outside.
A hero. I could only imagine, bro. I saw the videos of LA. That's why I asked. Yeah. It's kind of true. Kind of crazy.
Now, don't get me there are a lot of amazing people, so I don't want people to think all of LA is like that,
I love them. I love all people, dude.
And God bless the people who stayed in it. God bless the people who stayed in it and go, hey, you know what? God's calling me to be here right now for us, for, raising boys, and for even just financial reasons, be able to afford property. Maybe someday we'll go back to California, but.
So where are you guys here? So thank you for sharing all that. But we have limited time. Let's go. Let's get it, dude. What brings you here? You're in Sarasota now?
So yeah, I'm in the Sarasota area.
Cool.
I got there, and the crazy thing is I was just so lit up by how much things were growing. Like, there's food all over the place. Like, my wife and I we used to do dates. We used to drive up the PCH in California, and we go to this town called Ojai. And we used to sneak into, like, orange fields were everywhere. And oh my God, we'd open the window and be like, go. And she's grabbing every orange she can, and we're slowly rolling the whole back of the car just full of oranges.
Just on the highway, the Pacific Coast Highway?
It's a little town that's, like, up in the mountains.
Okay.
Ojai. Yeah, so then when we get to Florida, I just see, there's mangoes everywhere. There's papayas on the side of the road. Like,
you have mangoes in Sarasota?
Oh, yeah, man. Nice. Everywhere. Yeah. Oh, yeah, we're growing our own, too.
Cool. What you got, bro? Tell us about it.
All right, so we got a smorgasbord, and before we get into anything, I just want to say, if you are looking to plant anything, just do it. And before we even go, like, I mapped everything out. I'm like, I got these heirloom seeds from Seed Savers, and I'm like, I'm gonna do this. I planted so much stuff, and nothing happened. And I'm like, what happened? And one day I was just I was pissed. I got a watermelon from a little stand down the street. I'm like pissed. I just kind of threw the watermelon off the side. 2 weeks later, I have like 10 watermelon plants coming up. So I think sometimes, like I was saying, in the Philippines, we think too much of we have to do all this stuff when we have to control how nature's going to provide for us instead of just going, hey, you know what? Here's the seeds and just take it.
It doesn't work like that. You're right. You can't approach it like that. You're right.
Yeah.
Dude, I love that, by the way. All the seeds you buy in the store, they don't come up. And then you throw a watermelon on the ground. Yep. That's how it
but I
works.
think you just can't get frustrated. And for me, really leaning into, I did a lot of men's work for a long time. So I helped a lot of men work through trauma, just figure out like all the shit that they have in their life and just let that go. And how do you fully be present? Like, how do you fully be like an in the moment man? And
so you help guys with that.
Yeah. So I help guys with that.
Talk about that specifically, because that's interesting.
Well, I want to pull that. I want to pull that in real quick, because part of that is I could talk all I want, and when I'm leading men, I worked for a company called Everyman, who's an amazing company. But now that I do it more faith-based. But I realized when I became a dad, all these techniques I had, or, a stepfather and even a husband, all these techniques I had to slow down and be present and to like really be a biblical man. I mean, I was failing left and right because it was a whole new terrain for me, and I had to really learn. So for me, getting back to the land was an amazing way for me to be able to slow down. I tell my dad, I've talked to God more than ever because I'm out in the gardens, or I'm pruning or picking. And that's like my prayer and meditation in the morning. So we're growing this stuff, and I found myself outside planting a lot on my own. And I'm like, you know what? I see my stepsons, I need to find a way to bond with these amazing boys. And, I don't want to be on their phone or inside playing video games or whatever. So I started, I would get stuff, or we'd go to like the market, we'd buy something, or we'd eat fruit, and then we would start planting those seeds. Or I'd get a fruit tree and I'd be like, hey, if you guys want to do something, you got to come outside and help me for like 30 minutes. And we started planting these trees all over, and we started planting vegetables. We started doing all this stuff. So initially they're like, oh man, like my oldest is like 15, LA kid. He's like,
too cool.
And now I remember one of the first moments that we had is we planted like a loquat, and he's kind of like, oh, whatever. And I gave him one. I'm like, try that. And he's like, oh, okay. So he helps me plant it, and he has his friends come over, his new friends from, because we just moved to Florida. And they're like, yo, bro, you want to skate? He's like, yeah, come out back. Like, let me show you something. He's like, yeah, I planted this. And I was like, you did plant that. You did. And when that harvest comes and you can walk around and you can grab whatever it is that you want, because I don't have like artificial stuff in the house. I'm like, you guys can hate me, but Skittles is just pulling from nature and just trying to, remake what is out there already. So we've done a ton of planting all over, and it's really helped me to slow down in how I lead men, because now I know how to like really slow down and communicate, and it's a struggle every day. But I feel like in my frustrations, I can relate more to people.
Got you.
Yeah,
man. No, I'm just interested. How does someone like humble themselves to like you're saying it's hard every day. I failed a lot. Like to like just like learn and be like okay with that, and like really learn and humble themselves.
I think if you go back to the garden, and if you go back to what I was saying, if even you plant something, you put so much effort into it, and sometimes nothing comes up.
Yeah.
Right?
Who am I, dude?
Like I have a coffee tree. I got one bean. I did a video on Instagram. One bean. And I'm like, you know what? But it's a start. And I think for, even my stepsons and I'm like,
love it.
One good thing, it's a start. Right? And I think it's anything in life, is that we think that we're going to get things instantly. And we're in this culture where it's instant gratification and satisfaction, right? But when you learn that's not how the world works.
It's the truth, man.
It's not.
It's what society's telling people. Yeah, dude, I'm glad we're talking about this, because it's not. And that's not how nature is.
No.
You go to the garden. People come out there, they're like, what? Where's my, when am I harvesting? I'm like,
yeah.
Well, it's got to go from seed to sprouting to mature. And it's not that long. It's a couple months.
Sure.
But like it's quick, life's quick though.
Yeah. And that's some of the animals. Like look at perennial trees. like I say this all the time, particularly for men, if you really want to create a legacy, it's like that perennial fruit tree, right? Some of these, like, what is it, jackfruit, take like 5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah, it's special.
But when that harvest comes, like, you're pulling out these 20-pound jackfruits, and look how abundant they are, and look how useful, and there's so many ways you can prepare it, but it takes that time that you got to put into that. And I think that for me personally, like, I've learned so much from the garden and from planting, and I think it's even the anticipation of, I'm putting this work in, and I know in like 2-3 years, oh my gosh, you know what I mean? Like, those mangoes are going to be popping, or whatever it is, right?
Looking forward, man. Yeah. Like, what could this be? This could be so amazing, so abundant. Yeah.
Yeah. And
we got the vision, man.
Yeah. And I think that goes for any of our relationships.
Yeah.
Of not thinking we're going to, like, Jack, I need to get something out of you right away.
Exactly.
Like, sometimes I really, I used to think that a lot.
Dude.
When I was in LA, I think that was the big thing. If you meet someone and I'm like, oh, he's a producer? Okay, I got it.
Right.
And
Can we meet? Like, when do we? Yeah.
Yeah, and then once I started doing men's work, I'm in a group, and it's like all the guys I wanted to meet, like entertainment-wise, just happened to be in these men's groups. And now I don't care at all about what you do. I know that you're struggling, or I'm celebrating wins with you, or we're actually connecting on a human level as men, right? Like, the world wants to put us in all these different boxes and every title and whatever it is, but I'm a man, you're a man. Let's just face each other like in that moment and just be, and not make it complicated. And I think that's the garden. I think that's life.
Yeah.
We make things too complicated.
Yeah, we totally do, man. It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's like so simple. Like, think about it. We like grow up to, like, we talked about it before this podcast, like wanting to like get out of, you mentioned it, get out of our town, and like, and I really relate to that. Like,
where were you from?
I'm from Florida, 20 minutes from here, Palm Beach,
Yeah.
I was like, I got to get out of Florida. And then we run around and go seek and seek and seek. And then we do the whole hero's journey, whatever.
Yeah, man.
And then we realize, man, we got to come back home, be grounded.
Yep.
It's so simple.
Yep.
So, dude, talk about that, man. Like, and how did it tie in with Christianity? Because you mentioned that. I'm just curious. Like,
yeah, I think that a big thing that, I really love about permaculture, I've been doing a lot of research and studying this, because I find a lot of, like, when I look at biblical principles for me, particularly for a man protects, a man provides, and a man leads. And I think that that's a lot of what we can pull from, like, permaculture. Like, we're protecting the land. We're providing for our communities, for our families, from what our harvest is. We're teaching that knowledge and that wisdom. And then as a leader, we're stewards of that land. And I think a big thing that I really lean on, and I think that a lot of people overlook in the Bible, it's particularly for men, wherever men stand, right, in your faith. But I think that men have lost their purpose. And one of the things that I've really anchored in on is the creation mandate, where we're called to be fruitful, like like God tells Adam, right? Be fruitful in all that we do. And like, that's pushing against that fear, right? It's having abundance. We're called to multiply, having a family, having good, strong relationships. We're called to subdue the earth, which now, we're not really like looking to repopulate or populate all over, but there's that sense of adventure and going out, right?
Yes.
And there's the sense of community and brotherhood, and how do we connect with people from around the world right now? And then the final thing that I really look at is
creation mandate.
The final thing is to cultivate the land.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that that's a big thing that men have gotten disconnected with. Like,
I agree, man.
I love having dirt under my fingernails.
Yeah, dude. I was just cleaning them out.
I'm in LA and I'm sitting here and I'm like, people are looking at me like my agent, like, I had a meeting with my old agent just to catch up. And he's like, dude, like, what happened? I'm like, I grew up. Like, I got dirt on my fingers. I grew a beard out. Like, I'm happy and fulfilled now, and it's not the shallow thing.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. All the freaking for real superstars, by the way, who come out of LA, they end up all going to the land and getting farms.
They are. It's a.
By the way,
I think it's a huge movement, and going back to the creation mandate, I think it's awesome, even just for like a North Star for men in general, because a lot of those are all things that we're getting pushed away from, because we're getting pushed into fear. Even with a lot of these things, it's more of a competition versus collaboration. We're not called to be back to the land. Like there's an attack on families across our society as far as, we're overpopulated. Like it's so, negligent of you. And I think another thing is,
what do you think about that?
Dude,
I'm 1 of 5, by the way.
Okay, I'm 1 of 9.
Yeah,
this is what I
gnarly.
think. This is what I think, Jack.
Yeah.
And I think that you could probably agree with me that when I got off the highway and I drove here, I think it was about 5 miles, and I must have saw 100 lawnmowers going. I must have saw maybe 200 to 300 different guys working on landscape and making sure everything here looks beautiful, and I didn't see one thing edible. Yeah. So when people say there's not abundance here, there's not, I'm looking, I go, all that could be feeding people. When I walk through a town and it's just random landscape, and I'm like, you have homeless that don't have food, or we scream, there's supply chains, there's all these things. You can grow it right here.
Yeah,
bring those communities back, dude. Man. Get local.
Thank you for sharing that, dude, because it's just inefficiencies, right? Lack of different values, different priorities, different belief systems.
And if you've ever driven or flown across the country, it's so vast.
Yeah.
It's so big. Like we can grow everywhere. And I think that it's part of that fear to keep us in these boxes, man. There's too many. Humans are a parasite.
Yeah.
I hear that all the time.
Dude, my clients tell me that all the time.
Oh, no. How do you handle that?
All the time, bro. Yeah, I tell them, I'm like, man, maybe. But that belief system doesn't serve me. What, I'm a parasite?
Yeah.
That's not how I want to live. I want to contribute. I want to share,
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, I think we also lost that because we've become more of a take instead of a give. Society.
Yeah, dude, totally.
Dude,
this is good stuff. Thank you for sharing all this.
Yeah, man.
Being vulnerable, right?
Dang, you know what? We should whip out some drinks and sit here, and we could be ripping all day.
Yeah, for real. I do. Yeah, I appreciate this.
But I love what you're doing.
Yeah.
I saw a video that you did. Maybe it was like 2018, and you had like this little beat up truck, and you had like the magnet on the side, and you're like, oh man, like we're doing it. And I remember thinking like, that's what men aren't doing anymore. You mentioned the hero's journey. I bet you can imagine a turning point in your life where you faced something, you took it head on, you were scared shitless, but you did it.
Yeah.
And that made you the man that you are today.
Yeah, my guy. Yeah, because I didn't have a lot of the skills for sure, bro. Growing up, I didn't have a lot of the skills.
I lived in the mecca of farming in America, and I didn't know shit.
Yeah, bro.
Because I didn't put value, because
you weren't
society
listening.
around me didn't put value on it.
And by the way, we weren't listening because it was all there in front of us, like you said.
Time.
Yeah, the whole time.
I've been dancing around for 30-some years, and the answer was right there.
This is good stuff, though, man. We got to remember, right?
Yeah, I think we got to remember, and we got to be teachable, and we also have to lead. Yeah, I think that's a big thing.
Big time. We got to lead, bro. No matter how we're feeling or whatever, just thrown our way.
Yeah.
This is good stuff, man. I hope you're hearing it. Because, it wasn't easy, bro. That beat up truck broke down 100 times. Like, people don't even know. My truck broke down the other day, and I was like, man, this has been a while. Like, I'm living good.
Yeah.
It takes a lot to freaking shovel it, out of it. It really does.
Well, that's a great mindset, because, and I love that you said that, because I had something similar happen. Not my car broke down, but something that I haven't had to deal with it for like a couple years. And I remember being like, what that? Like, oh God, what? And then I remember thinking like, this used to be a weekly thing. Now it's been several years. And this is a little moment of humility where I can be grateful,
Amazing, man.
And, and I think a big, I don't know where we are on time, but I think a lot of this has to do with like sovereignty too. Just, I think breaking away from the matrix and just getting sovereign and just getting connected. And I think society.
What is sovereignty for people? Because I love that word.
Well, I know the world puts us in all these contracts, right? Like everything we do is a contract. Like even my wife and I getting married, we had to get permission from the state, or, the ability to drive, you have to get permission, or I got to pay taxes on my house, all this thing. I think the idea of getting sovereign is breaking away from the control. Like we're in this matrix of everything's trying to control us. And we're trying to figure out how we stay in the lanes. And sometimes it's like, no, I'm going to veer off here. I want to be able to do what I'm going to do. Obviously, don't harm people.
Yeah, of course.
But just let me do my
live
thing.
by like all that good stuff the Bible talks about too, right? Treat your neighbor with respect, all that love.
Yeah, do unto others, man. Love your neighbor as yourself.
But I love that, man. Yeah.
Yeah. So sovereignty is a big thing. I got a buddy who was in LA too. He's originally from Miami, moved back, and
nice.
We're starting a company called Sovereign Men, and the whole point is to get men sovereign body, mind, and spirit. I
love that, man. So it's going to be like a service for men.
Yeah, it's service for men. So whether it's getting sovereign and really getting a hold of physically of getting back in the shape, knowing what you're eating, you know what I mean? Breaking, the food pyramid and really knowing what you're putting in your body, growing your own food. A lot of it kicks into even spiritually. We're so disconnected. I'm not going to tell anybody how to find God, but we're going to show you a way of just get out in the garden and you'll know that there's a master creator here. You get out in the nature, go walk through Big Sur or through the redwoods or go scuba diving in the Bahamas or Key West. And
what would you say? Because I agree, by the way. Man. I've been to some, you said you traveled a bunch too.
Yeah.
I've been to some epic spots. And the garden alone, just the garden outside. But you go and you can't deny there's an epic creator.
Where's the most epic place you've been?
Oh, that's a sick question. I want to know yours
sick,
too.
Right?
Yeah, I would say probably, Hawaii is hard to beat. Hawaii.
It's on my list.
Yeah, cool. How about you?
I've been to some amazing places. The Philippines definitely stand out. Iceland's amazing. But I think the redwoods. I was in the redwoods and the sequoias because they're kind of next to each other when I was going into 6th grade. I was in some leadership program thing or whatever, and I don't know what I was doing. I was got sent out, and we were in Yosemite, and went from Yosemite to Kings Canyon and in the redwoods and sequoias, and I remember being wow, I see an oak tree at home. You and I could put our hands together and reach around it.
You need 10
we had a whole group of kids, and we still didn't get around. And I remember
I remember that too, bro.
Just looking and just be I didn't even know how to explain it. It's just something. It was out of body experience. And then going back, and you're in 6th grade, and everybody's worried about the new Jordans or the Jankos or whatever everybody's wearing. The new Mace CD came out, and I'm to date myself, and I'm like, do you guys know what the redwoods are? Have you seen the sequoias? My God, I can't even. And I've had that in literally ingrained in my soul since I was a kid. So I think that's where my wanderlust is. So I'd have to say the redwoods, just being out there.
Heck yeah, man.
Yeah.
But dude, by the way, yeah, because we've been exposed to all these amazing things, had all these experiences. But I wanted to ask you, man, before we, what if someone was bro, God's not real. God's not real. You don't even know what you're talking about. There's no proof, all these things. What would you say to that person?
I'd say the proof is in life. The proof is in life. You just watch whether it's whether it's an infant in the womb or whether it's just a seed, or however we see things come from nothing to something, and we're literally watching, and not just something that's just there and just exists, something that contributes to more abundance in life. God is so abundant, and you hear all the time in the moments where people are on their deathbed and they deny God their whole life, and then in those final moments they're like, but what if I was wrong? What if, So when I speak to men, I'm like, what if, and what if you didn't push against it, and what if you stepped out into the redwoods? What if you were in the waterfalls in New Zealand and you just stopped and you realized, and you looked up at the stars at night and saw the Milky Way, and you go, I thought the world was only me, and now I realize how big and vast that is, and I have zero control. Something is putting all this into play. There's a master creator here.
Yeah, man, it's magical.
Yeah,
seed to nothing to something.
And if they really want me to break down, look at all the thing that man does, and we just destroy everything, right? And then we have to go back to the original systems. Seems like everything we try to manufacture goes awry.
Why do we do that, though? Why do we continue mining and building the cities and messing up the land?
Yeah, if you look even back in the Bible, I think it's people trying to play God. People want full control and want to think that they can control everything. And
Interesting.
I see that in a lot of the social movements now. It's like remove God and then anything goes. And I can be the master creator of my life, and I can take control. But the reality is like, I'm a train wreck when I do it on my own. Like, when have you ever said, I'm going to do this, all these steps, and all these things are going to work for me? It doesn't happen.
Yeah, it takes some faith for sure. I feel that, bro.
Yeah.
It's just interesting. It is in life. It is like, I don't know. It's hard to explain.
Yeah.
But it's all good. I fought it for a long time too. I wasn't like, it's all real.
Yeah.
But like
even
in my
the emotion
heart,
of love, man.
Yeah, man.
Just the emotion of like explain
like how real is
love.
that?
Explain love. Like, how do we even explain that? How does
It's
a mother
like
see her baby for the first time? You've never even met this being,
right.
but you die right there in that moment for that child.
Yeah, it's powerful, man.
It is.
That's what it's about.
I mean, I'd die for some of my fruit trees, man.
Yeah, it's bigger than, dude. It's bigger. It all matters, though. That's the point.
For sure.
I think it matters.
Oh, for 100%.
Because that thing without God, it makes it where it doesn't matter.
Yep.
I think it totally does, bro. It feels like it does.
100%. And I hear, Cam, you just had Cameron on, and him and I talk about this a lot. He's an amazing dude, and I'm so glad. And he's the one that mentioned you to me. Cool, so I didn't even need to know you, but I already knew you were like an amazing dude just based off of that. And I think that's men need friends like that where you can just trust that guy in building out your community.
I already feel like we're brothers, It's like that.
100. Yeah, I could. Yeah. My wife's probably outside, like, all right, we got to go. But I think with like Cam, we talk about.
Shout out Cam, by the way.
Cam's amazing.
Food Forest.
Jim, Gale, Matt Britt, all those guys are Food Forest Abundance are great. Like Cam and I, we talk about like, permaculture and growing our own food could solve a lot of the world's problems, and this is something that I sit and I think about a lot. And I say that, yes, and we still need God, because those systems don't work, without God. There's a master creator, that's the master gardener.
How?
Well, just say we get a super rainy season, or we get a huge drought, or we get storms like Hurricane Ian that came through and just devastated all this stuff that, I planted and found out my insurance doesn't cover tomatoes or fruit trees, But when you sit and you go, wow, we really are at the mercy, and we can plant the seed, but what happens there is all part of that natural system. Like we were saying earlier, like I can do whatever, I could put every fertilizer and pesticide and everything, but I'm still at the mercy of, is that going to take based off of everything that was created around it? There's a million elements that I can't even start to fathom to think about of what plays into that.
Yeah.
And I think that's why food is so spiritual in general. And I think that's why food is our medicine. And that's why it's not really anymore, because the soils are depleted. We're eating food from the grocery store a month after it's been pulled. It's lost its spirit. It's lost the energy from the soil, And like what you said, I think, working in the garden, we are putting our energy in that. That's part of our spirit. Our time is the most valuable resource.
Yeah.
And
I feel that way.
Giving my time, I'm giving my, my energy to that.
But before we leave, I mean, bro, by the way, thank you for coming. I want to do this again if you're up to it.
Man, you said, you texted the other day, you're like, I got an extra bed, like if you want to stay.
Yeah.
I almost brought like, my sleeping bag and a tent and be like, hey, I'm moving in for a week. I got to learn from the master here.
Dude. Yeah, you're welcome to come out. Seriously. I meant it. Yeah. I want to share as well.
I would love that. And if anybody is just listening to this podcast for the first time or stumbled upon it, however, Jack's Instagram is amazing. Like there's so much wisdom in there, and I think it not only just wisdom, but like you honestly like care, and you can see that you love what you do. And for me, I'd have a big shift in what my purpose was of like what God was calling me to do as far as like my vocation. And I want to get back to the land. Like I love fishing, I love permaculture, I love these things, and I'm like, man, these are things I fought for so long, and the land keeps calling me back. And I'm tired of not listening.
Yeah,
it's in us. It's in tired of not listening.
Dude, thank you for sharing. I'm here for it. And by the way, yes, freaking everything we're talking about, guys. And thank you for the shout out and the love.
Yeah.
But I do love what I do, and I think loving what you do is important. You know, a lot of people have all sorts of opinions, but I think wanting to get up and go do something bigger than us is important. So
yeah, I think wanting to do something bigger than us and connecting with community, whether people are a family man, have a family or not, like you can build your family out with that community. You know, I'm so blessed to be able to have a little homestead that my wife and I are you know, putting together, and we're planting the seeds and God's creating, but we're meeting so many friends along the way, and you know,
man,
that just continues to build the love, man.
This
cultivating the love here.
Cultivate the love, the new tagline. Yeah. I was thinking of cultivate freedom.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Is that good? We're gonna do that, guys.
Cultivating freedom.
Someone has the domain though, so I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I was looking at stuff like seeds of sovereignty, like all these types of stuff. Like,
yeah. Do you have sovereign men? You got to do
it tonight? I got all that stuff.
All right, he's out.
Yeah,
dude. Thank you so much, Matthew.
Hey man, I appreciate it.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
What's up?